Good morning, everybody. We all know we have gathered here today to welcome amongst us Miss Eileen Barker from California, USA. Miss Eileen Barker is a law graduate from Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. She worked as a trial attorney for the US Department of Justice and a private law firm for 10 years. Seeing the problems and the limitations of the adversarial system, she became a mediator over 20 years ago, focusing on mediation of commercial disputes, workplace conflicts, family and divorce. She also trains in mediation at various law schools including Bowles Hall School of Law, University of California, Berkeley, Hastings School of Law, University of California, San Francisco, John F. Kennedy University, and etc. For the past 10 years, she has also specialized in teaching people how to forgive as a means to healing conflict for once and for all, and teaching lawyers and mediators to help to forgive others. Miss Eileen Barker, we are privileged to have you here with us today. Now I would like to call upon Dean Sir to welcome her. Sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It just reminds me one thing. There was once a lady. She bought a parrot as a pet, and this parrot can speak also. Now, when she took this parrot home, I don't know, parrot didn't like the lady or whatever the reason, and he was really nasty. Always creating a trouble for the lady, abusing her, everything he was doing. And in fact, whenever she tried to pick her, she used to peck that lady as a lady was in trouble. So finally, when she got so fed up with this thing, so one day what she did is, she opened the fridge and dumped this parrot inside the freezer. The parrot was howling, screaming and everything. And suddenly after the 5 minutes, she realized that everything was silent. She got worried. She thought probably the parrot may not have died also. So immediately she opened up the freezer. And she opened the freezer and then found, okay, the parrot was very much alive and behaving very decently also. Totally changed. He said, sorry madam, they'll apologize for what I did. Henceforth, I'll be very obedient pet also, and I will not do anything. So lady said, okay, your apologies are accepted. So then the parrot asked, madam, can I ask one question? He said, yeah, please go ahead. The parrot looked at the freezer. He said, madam, what did this chicken do? What did the chicken do? No, this is not a forgiveness. This is, I'm talking about the theory of deterrence. I said that what we do in the criminology we teach us. But when you talk about forgiveness, it's a concept, has a two different dimensions when you see from the religious point of view or you see from the criminal point of view, legalistic point of view. I was just reading suddenly because I come across a very few interesting lines I must share with you. Is that everyone may not be nice, but there is something nice in everyone. Never keep a fixed image for anyone because people act differently with different people. Now what happens is that generally, because I was talking to the madam also, it's a perception that changes it. It is unfortunately what we decide a person is a good or bad, and we decide that we has to be forgiven or not forgiven, that is bad, is it? Now, it reminds me of a small incident, a small story which is there was one lady who was very meticulous. Every work used to do in a meticulous manner. Suddenly, because in her neighborhoods, the two bachelors started start living at it. So next morning she saw this bachelor had washed the clothes and they were drying up the clothes. So she suddenly told her husband, see these chaps that they do, this boy, they don't know how to wash the clothes. The clothes are so dirty, is it? She was feeling so bad, jittery, is it? Why the clothes couldn't wash the clothes properly, is it? Same thing happened next day also. Same thing, they're drying up clothes, dirty clothes. Again she picked up the husband, why they can't properly, somebody should teach them, is it? I mean, she used to feel jittery. Third day, fourth day. Fifth day, the same thing happened, is it? But this time suddenly she found the clothes are very bright and very neat and clean and everything. So then she told her husband, is it? So all this time the husband was not paying any heed as to what is happening, as she is saying. So he said, now see, look, John because today they have now really learned, is it, how to wash the clothes, is it? And the clothes are so clean, is it? The husband told, today I just cleaned the window pane, is it? Now this is what it conveys, is it? We see from our angle, not from the other's angle. And probably half the things probably will be solved as this forgiveness if we see the thing people their angle, not our angle. No. With this small brief about which I understand the word of forgiveness, Madam, we are indeed honored to have you here within Sharda University. Of course, she has already told, but given a brief introduction, so maybe I reiterate the whole thing as 2 points. Eileen Barker is a forgiven teacher, forgiveness coach, and a leader in the movements to integrate emotional healing and forgiveness in conflict resolution. A practicing litigation lawyer who rejected a traditional adversarial role, Eileen has focused her practice on the mediation and conflict resolution for over 20 years, helping thousands of people resolve disputes outside courts. And that's very much required for the India also, because we have a lot of litigation. That's what the VCs were saying, because this number of litigation cannot go unless we go for the mediation litigation. This work led her to the deep exploration of forgiveness as it relates to the resolving conflicts and the making peace, both with others and oneself. She has led numerous training on forgiveness, providing forgiveness coaching for both individuals and organizations, and is the author of the Forgiveness Workbook and Forgiveness Mediation CD. A widely published writer and popular speaker, her articles and talks includes Forgiveness, Moving from Conflict to Peace, Forgiveness, The Art of Letting Go, What Would Gandhi Do, as a great father of nation, What the Belief Does Spirituality Have to Do with the Conflict Resolution, Emotional Literacy for Mediation, for Judges, for Attorneys, Zen and the Art of Influencing Almost Anyone. Now she has got a lot of teaching experience with that. She is also part of our community also. She has taught at the University of California, Berkeley School of Law, University of California, Hastings College of Law, John F. Kennedy University Graduate Schools of Professional Psychology, Sonoma State University, Clinton University, Vernon University. She graduated magna cum laude from the Georgetown University Law Center and also holds an honors degree in psychology from the Indiana University. Madam, before we begin our session, I would like to give a brief introduction about our schools. School of Law, Sharda University is a relatively new school that started in 2012. Our first batch is expected to graduate in year 2017. The school offers a wide range of the law courses, which includes a BA LLB, BB LLB, BCom LLB, BSc LLB, LLM, and a PhD. It's happening in a multicultural environment as an international students from different countries like Afghanistan, Africa, Nepal, Bhutan are studying here. Forgiveness, as it's used in the professional world, I mean, as far as the law is concerned, is a relatively new but interesting concept, and we're eager to listen to you. I believe we all like it already, and if you have given a chance, would love to incorporate this concept to promote a healthier work environment at the Sharda University. Use of forgiveness in legal dispute also appears to be a brilliant idea. We are looking forward to learn more about it and consider how these concepts and ideas can be incorporated in our teaching at the law school. Now I'll conclude by few lines, which is of course in Hindi, because then I'll translate it in the English. वो कहते हैं, let me speak otherwise the whole flavor will go as well. जो पहले क्षमा मांगता है वह सबसे बहादुर है, जो सबसे पहले क्षमा करता है वह सबसे शक्तिशाली है, और जो सबसे पहले भूल जाता है वो सबसे सुखी है. Madam, whatever is again, who seeks forgiveness, he is the stronger person, a stronger person. Who forgives, he is the strongest person. And who forgets everything, he is the most happiest person. Thank you.
Thank you.
All yours.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for
I'd
your
like to
enlightening
copy
words.
that quote.
Eileen ma'am, I request you to come to the podium.
Yes, can I just get my own?
Yeah, I'll let
Okay,
you.
thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm just looking because it's a little hard to see in the back. I want to see all of you. I'm so honored to be here, and I just want to start with a message of gratitude. And I'm so honored that I was invited to come and share a topic that I'm very passionate about. Yeah, I'll move it up. Thank you. And I also want to say that I hope that our talk today about forgiveness, and it is meant to be an interactive session, so I hope you will interact with me. Usually when I'm teaching, I'm not sitting at a podium, I'm down and I'm talking, but because of the microphone and this is a large room, it's probably best if I do stay here, but I would really love to hear from you also. And I hope that we can share this in the spirit of adding to the peace in the world, which we can see around us. This is something our world needs. And so that's my hope. I also just want to thank Vice Chancellor, the Dean, all the Deans who have come, and I feel honored by your presence and grateful for your interest in forgiveness. The quote that you shared reminds me of something that Gandhi said, and he's certainly my greatest inspiration in forgiveness work. And so I would like to share. He said, "The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is an attribute of the strong." And I think sometimes in our culture we think it's weak to show our feelings. It's weak to say I'm hurt. Weak to say, oh, I care. I care what's happening for you. I care about you. But Gandhi is saying, no, that takes strength. As you say, that is the strongest person. And so that statement is always near to me, especially when I'm talking to lawyers and business people, because we have a strong culture, at least in America, that you go into the workplace and you go into a legal situation without feelings. It's all intellectual, and so you can only be professional. You can't have that more human side. And this is something that I think is hurting all of us, to be honest. I think we have to have balance. So that is part of the message. I would like to just ask if you can show me with your hand how many of you are from the School of Law? Great. And School of Business? So about half and half. And are there other schools that, yes, which schools?
School of Languages.
Yes, and culture?
School of Engineering and Technology.
School of Medical Science.
Ah, medical? And also medical? Great. Any others? Okay, good. Thank you. So I want to say that I've been visiting India for the first time. This is the last day of my trip, actually. I've been here for almost 3 weeks, traveling as much as possible. 2 weeks in the northern parts and then 1 week in the south. And I have fallen in love with India. I hope to come back and see more of it, because you can only see a small bit in 3 weeks. But it's an amazing place, it really is. I knew it had to be. I've been wanting to come here for over 30 years because it's the birthplace of so many great people. Of course, I've already mentioned Gandhi, but so many other great teachers, and so I was always very interested in this place. And so finally I decided it's time, and I haven't been the least disappointed
disappointed. It's more, even more than I thought. It's such a rich place. So again, very happy to be able to now share with you something that I love. And as I've been welcomed to India, to welcome you into what I call the land of forgiveness, and to share with you my work I call the path of forgiveness, because it's a pathway. I don't think it's just something that just happens one day. It's something that is a daily path if you choose it. And so that's part of my message, is that when something really intense happens, then you have an opportunity to forgive. But even little things in life every day, and sometimes that's more important in, say, workplace, is to be able to forgive in those kinds of situations so things don't accumulate. So why is it so important? Why am I so passionate about forgiveness? Because I have seen, I've been mediating for 20 years, seeing all kinds of conflicts, and mediating for teaching forgiveness for 10 years. And what I've seen is that no matter what has happened to somebody in somebody's life, no matter what the situation is, whether it's in family, workplace, medicine with a doctor and a patient, business dispute, it all comes down to the human beings who are involved, the needs of those human beings that need to be understood. And what I have seen firsthand is that no matter what has happened, it is possible to forgive, and it's possible for the people to heal and move forward. Not everybody chooses that, obviously, but what I want people to know in every situation is that there is a choice. Then you can choose it or not choose it. It's not something you can force somebody to do. It's very personal. Each person has to do. But it enables us to be free. It enables us to be happy. Enables us to have peace in our life. So I always like to start by talking about what forgiveness is, because there's a lot of misunderstanding sometimes. What does it really mean to forgive? And it means a lot of different things, but I'm going to start with what it doesn't mean. So it doesn't mean that you are saying what happened is okay with you. It doesn't mean you condone it. It doesn't mean you're excusing it. It doesn't mean you're minimizing the pain involved, because some of the people who are forgiven have experienced tremendous pain, tremendous struggle, and yet they have forgiven. One of my role models, another role model of mine, was Nelson Mandela, because when I read his book, The Long Walk to Freedom, and I read about his struggles in South Africa, and then he was imprisoned, as you all know, for 27 years. And when he came out, he was still had his heart open. He had befriended his wardens, and when he had to make the decision, how will we address the problems, he had the opportunity to have a war tribunal, and he said, no, we need healing, not retribution, and establish the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. When I read this book, and we all know the story, but when you see it through his eyes and everything he endured, then I realized the enormity of his choice in that moment to have healing instead of retribution, because it's so easy to just want that revenge. And it was so inspiring to me, because I thought if he could do that, then every case I've ever had, every situation I work with, workplace, business, medical, divorce, family, things like that, neighbors, property disputes, why can't they forgive? And it really opened my mind to see that, yes, we can. It's just not been part of our culture. We don't expect it. We're not taught to do it. Lawyers don't guide us that way. These are our counselors. Yet we're not guiding our clients that way because it's not been part of the culture. So I'm not alone in making efforts to change the culture. So for example, when I taught in law schools, I was teaching negotiation and mediation. I was also teaching my students how to be good listeners. It's really important for all of us to learn how to really hear the other person. and to teach emotional intelligence so that we can be honoring of people's feelings instead of trying to push them away. And things like this, and apology, and forgiveness as well, of course. And so there is beginning to be a large international movement to really change the culture of law, to include peacemaking and healing, which was a very strong message of Gandhi. This is something he wrote about, that this was the true purpose of being a lawyer, is to bring parties together who had been riven asunder, is the way he put it. And this is very important that we start teaching law students how to do this, as well as everything else. We still need to have our other skills in case it's needed, but this should be included. So I kind of want to go back to what forgiveness is and what it's not. So it's not forgetting. It's not minimizing or condoning. Forgetting in the sense that we're not pretending something terrible didn't happen. We're not, because as we talked about earlier, we want people to learn from their mistakes. If somebody's being harmed in a situation, we want them to take steps we don't want them to stay in a situation to continue being harmed. So it's to be learning and taking the lessons, but forgiving, so that we're not holding on to the anger and the resentment and not trying to get revenge. So what forgiveness is, it's a choice, as I said. It's something that you do for yourself. One of the questions I'm often asked is, well, why should I forgive if the other person hasn't apologized, hasn't repented, hasn't made amends, etc.? The reason is for yourself, because the person who is being harmed by carrying around the anger is you. There are many, many studies now that show that when you carry anger, you are at far greater risk of heart disease and all kinds of, hypertension, every disease that's caused by stress, which is pretty much every disease, is a contributing factor, even cancer and depression. So it's very important to realize that the person being hurt is you, the person who's holding it. And we have a saying, maybe it's come over to India, that when you hold on to your anger, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, right? So you've heard this. So this is why you're doing it for yourself. It's a selfish act. It's a self-care, not for the other person. So additional benefits in addition to health and well-being, I wanted to talk about specifically in the workplace. Because, of course, in the workplace, we want people to be functioning at their best, to be productive, to be doing their best work. If you're in a university, you're not necessarily generating profits, but in a profit business, that's very important. And when you have conflict in the workplace, which of course is very common, because conflict is, wherever you have humans, you have conflict. But when it's left unaddressed, the cost is very high to an organization. You have people who don't function well together, teams that don't work well together, so you're not maximizing your efforts. People who aren't able to collaborate because they don't like each other or they have some rift between them. There are studies that show that when you have conflict in the workplace, there's higher rates of absentee because people are ill, because it does contribute to illness when you're in conflict. And then ultimately, there's greater turnover. People will leave. And that is very costly to an organization. You have to find a new person, train a new person. There's an organizational loss of continuity every time you have to bring in a new person. And these are just sort of a few. I'm sure you can think of others. So it's a very important thing to address in an organization, so that you have people who are, like I say, functioning at the top of their game. Any questions so far? I think I'll pause and see if you will interact. I'd love to hear, especially anything that's of interest to you or any question you might have.
You see, it's not easy to forgive.
Yes.
It's not easy to forgive. One has to work upon one has to work upon one's emotions, First one has to resolve one's own conflict and get rid of that pain. Then only one can elevate oneself to that position where one can forgive the other person. So how to work upon one's own emotions so that one gets into that mental state where he forgives the other person. How to work upon one's emotion and upon one's ideas.
Yes,
That is very important.
yes.
So how to
How
do
to
that,
do
how
that.
to bring about that change in yourself, that is relatively very important. So teach us how to work upon our emotions so that we get into a state whereby we forgive others.
That's a great question. Thank you for that. Well, first thing I really love about this question is that it's a very important principle that's embedded in it, which is that the first part of forgiveness does not have anything to do with the other person. It's what you're doing within yourself. And this is something that when you are, if you're in the position of trying to help other people, it's one of the first things I'm always doing is if I can help people just dismiss the other person for a moment and focus inward, that is a big step to take. Because I don't know if it's true here, but I can tell you it's in the U.S., it's always about the other person. It's their fault. The blame and the story is always about the other person. People don't look at themselves. So already you have that awareness that you have to first do that. And sometimes, to be honest, the kind of forgiveness work I do, it's, there's a kind of forgiveness where somebody says, okay, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? And you'll say, yes, I forgive you. This is, a wonderful thing. But you don't always have that. If the person is dead, if the person won't apologize, you still want to be able to forgive. So the most important part of forgiveness is always within yourself. And now the question about, well, how do you work with the emotion? It's key. It's one of the reasons why sometimes people say, yes, I forgive you, but then they still are carrying the bitter feelings. And probably most of us have had that experience where you thought you forgave and then you realize you're still upset. So it's because the emotional piece hasn't been done. You can't really forgive until you do that work. So the first thing you have to do is to be willing to feel what you're feeling. Not to push it away at all, just to feel it, not with anybody else, just within yourself. If you're angry, are you sad, are you, whatever it is, to feel these feelings, to honor them. Because if I could wave a wand and do one thing in the world, it would be to have people be less afraid to feel their pain. If people would just feel the pain, take that minute, and we would have a different world. Instead of doing that, we lash out, take drugs, do whatever we do to avoid feeling. So this is the second huge thing. So first it's coming back to yourself, and secondly it's being willing to feel what you feel. And so that's a huge thing. And then there's more you can do actually, because usually if I'm teaching a forgiveness class, I teach about 5 or 6 steps on the emotions. So those are the first 2. The third one is when you're in touch with that emotion that's underneath the story. It's underneath what happened and who did what. It's just that hurt. It's very pure. And then I ask my students, is this something you have felt before? This exact feeling? And they always will say yes. And what they will discover is what has happened is something within them has gotten triggered. It's usually something that sometimes they'll say, yes, this has happened to me all my life, this kind of a thing, or yes, this happened to me when I was a child. And so if somebody really wants to do the deepest level of forgiveness work, it's to realize where is that emotion coming from? Because there's something that is there for that person to heal emotionally. And so that's the third piece. And that's really deep inner work for the person to do. But if they do it, it's transformative. It's very, very healing. So much so that somebody will get to the point where they'll say, this was good, that this happened because it caused me to have this huge healing. And when you can get to that point where you can actually have some appreciation, some even gratitude, that, you know, I'm sorry that this happened, but there was a good thing that came out of it because I had a chance to heal something within myself that was very important. And that really helps that person experience peace, love, and happiness. So these are some of the things. Yes,
May I add some my reaction, what I feel
of
about
course.
it? When I encounter such situations, so what generally I feel is, with any actions, any my reactions or maybe the forgiveness, any thing is, unless first I have to convince myself is it. I debate with myself, my inner one is it. And it's a debate which is completely the conflicts between my inner, my outer is it, probably that and my the thought process also. So probably when you're able to convince, so first thing rather than going for the forgiveness, I have to convince myself, should I do that? No, not as it.
Yeah.
So it's maybe in so many activities, probably, I mean, that's the only reason which I can, because I've been able to overcome certain situations where the conflict is going as a, should I do the A thing, or maybe is giving up some bad habits, or anything as it. So first thing, because you're fighting for yourself as it, convincing yourself as it. Okay, this is action, which action is better and you're supposed to take. So forgiveness also, if one has to do as it, first has to go convince yourself as it.
Yes.
Argue with the self, convince the self, then that goes the take.
Yes, I agree. You know, our greatest conflicts are within ourselves. That's true. That's really true.
Madam, if you are in a conflict with someone, okay, and then you say, okay, we have got into a very heated argument, and then you say, okay, I forgive you. And it's so help with you, I am not taking it. Then how does it, gives an individual peace inside or something?
Yes.
So that is forgetting. That is not a forgiveness.
Well, this
But
is,
he's not taking your forgiveness.
this is why I'm
What
saying,
happens? The conflict is straight.
No, but the forgiveness is not for him, it's a forgiveness for yourself.
So,
You're forgiving action, what's what we say in the forgiveness?
situation you are doing it, that is not giving
so,
peace to
so
us.
first of all, when you say, okay, I forgive you, nothing's happened. That's not forgiveness. So that's what I'm saying. Even if you said, right away, that's not really forgiveness. I am not, and I encourage you not to focus on the words that are said. The forgiveness is in your heart. Yeah, there's a teacher in California, Jack Kornfield. He says forgiveness is making the decision not to put the other person outside of your heart. But that's where it happens, is inside. It doesn't happen in the words. And this is one of the mistakes I think our culture makes. Many children are said, tell them you're sorry, but it's not real, it's just words. So I'm trying to show people something more authentic has to happen, and it might not happen quickly. It may take time, because in the heat of the moment, very few people can actually forgive. There are some. I mean, Gandhi was able to do it, I can't do it. But, so you have to leave it right there, agree to disagree, but then over time. And, sometimes it takes time. I work with people, say, in divorce, they're not ready to forgive right away, sometimes. Or somebody's child's been killed, they may not be ready for a long time. So, we have to be very respectful of that. It can't be rushed. Yeah. But it's a good point, because I think that, I forgive you, is what gives forgiveness a bad name. Thank you. So there's actually, I think of forgiveness in 4 dimensions, 4 levels. So, and we've already talked about some of them. The one level is mental, in the mind, the thoughts, what we say to ourselves about the situation, and that's the first, we can work with that level. You can work with any of these levels and they're all helpful, but together it's wonderful. So you look at, what is the story that if I'm doing my work, I say, what is the story I'm telling about this other person or the situation? And you have to start, being willing to look at your own thought process. And where am I, creating a story? This is another big point I make in training, which is that we tell stories in our head all the time. That's what the mind does. We think, well, that's not a story, that's just what happened. But it isn't just what happened, because, you know, we could all look at the same incident and we would describe it in different ways. So something happens, and we select certain facts, and we omit others, and we create a story. And usually it's a story where we're the victim, where the other person is at fault. And so when you're willing to look at how I created a story where I'm the victim and the other person is at fault, then you can start shifting that if you want to, if you choose to forgive, and to see that, you know, there's other ways to look at the situation, to change the perspective, which is, then the whole thing looks very differently. It's like you clean the glass. So that's the mental. Then there's the emotional, which we've talked about. Then there's the spiritual, which is very important, and I don't mean religious. I mean spiritual in the sense of appreciating the lessons, the bigger lessons. What can I learn about this? What is here for me on the deepest level? Sometimes this is very connected to that emotional healing I described. So for an example, I've had many people come to my forgiveness trainings, and when they do the emotional work, they discover that something happened to them as a child. Maybe they were mistreated or neglected, and they believed that they were not valuable, that they were not good enough. It's a very deep core kind of a message to take on when you're a small child, but it's very common. And then now, as an adult, they look at this and they can see it's not true, and there's healing. That's a spiritual, because they have a life healing and see, no, it's not true that I'm not, I have worth, I have value, and when they see that, it's very deeply healing, and they can reconnect with the oneness, with the divinity, however you want to think about that. So that's the spiritual aspect. Then the fourth one is the physical aspect, which is very interesting because neuroscience, are you hearing all about neuroscience here? It's very big now. Is all the research that's being done is showing us that every emotion, every thought is stored in the body, and especially trauma. And what I've discovered is that when people have a conflict, at some levels, a serious conflict, there's trauma. So when I'm doing forgiveness work or I'm teaching and people go to this level of, as I said, maybe this child was abandoned, neglected, abused, these are traumas. And so this is something that's in the body, and it has to be healed at that level to really be free. And so using what we're learning about neuroscience, we have techniques to help people do that. And that way, it's really gone, and the person's not going to be re-triggered again because they've healed it at that level. So all four of those are very important. They're, you know, when I'm working, say, in a corporate setting, I'm working more usually with the mental level, maybe a little bit of the emotional, but depending on the setting, I'm telling you, that's all the four quadrants that can be drawn on. So I want to just share for the lawyers briefly that there is a very large international movement afoot that is a growing movement, to really shift the culture of law, as I mentioned before, to really teach law students and lawyers how to take the role of peacemaker and healer. And if people are interested in that particular topic, I might be able to share a little bit more about it later. Because we have different people from departments, I won't go into it too deeply. But I want to say for the medical people that this work has been used in disputes, as I say, with patients and doctors, and of course in the workplace too, because you know, somebody, for example, I had a beautiful story once. I was doing a training for a hospital, and there was a doctor who was treating a sick child, and the child died. The family, of course, was very distraught, and they brought agreements. And they had a kind of a mediation session, and the doctor came in and he said, "I'm so sorry," and I'm not going to practice medicine anymore, I just can't do it. And the family said, no, nonsense. Not only do we forgive you, but this family, they were immigrants, and they said, they had 2 other children, and they insisted that he be their doctor too. And so it's a very beautiful story of a deep healing that happened between these two. So instead of the usual course, which would be malpractice lawsuit, ruin the doctor, just tear the family apart to have to live with this for years more, there was real healing. What brought them to that, I don't know, because I wasn't directly involved with it. It was shared with me. But I think it's an important thing. And in the U.S., there's a big movement. They call it, for the doctors, they say sorry. Or no, it's called Sorry Works. And they're teaching doctors, if you make a mistake, admit it, say you're sorry. And that reduces, at the University of Michigan, who was in Michigan? One of the deans was in Michigan? I forget. Vice Chancellor, was it you? You were in Minnesota.
No, Michigan.
Did he?
Mr. Jain.
Yeah.
Mr. Ajay Jain.
Okay, so in the University of Michigan, they did a big study and having doctors do this and just be forthright, because the former culture had been denied, don't talk to the family, and the claims plummeted, and of course there's a huge financial savings because that kind of, so this is very important in the medical world. The business world as well. I have done many mediations for employment cases, workplace cases. When an employer is sued for discrimination, harassment, whatever, wrongful termination, I don't know what kind of, if you have the same kind of claims here, very expensive to an organization. Not just the money for the lawyers, but also the distraction, the resources that have to be pulled off of the mission of the organization to the lawsuit. So again, it's very, very key. So I want to share a little bit about, so what can an organization do? What could you do in your department to help bring in forgiveness? It's really about creating a culture of forgiveness is what the goal would be. And I think there are 2 things that can be done. And the first one is training people. I think that everybody benefits from basic training. These are life skills. Good listening. We all, especially in law school, we're taught how to talk, but how to listen well is very important. How to be empathetic, again, caring. And sometimes that's what people want more than anything. And we really pay a big price when we're not willing to hear people and care about people. And I made a mental note of this the other day with this horrible shooting rampage in Pakistan. What did they say? They say, we want them to feel the same pain we've been feeling. So I'm not excusing it in any way, but I'm just saying this is really important that we start listening and caring about people before they have to go to these extreme measures to get people's attention. This is, as I understand, this is a form of communication. Very wrong, very misguided, but this is the kind of thing we're seeing more and more. So the other kind of training is forgiveness training, teaching people how to forgive. It's learnable. Everybody can learn. We are all taught when we're children that we should forgive. Almost every religion teaches that, but I don't know of any that teaches people how to do it. What are the steps? And there are steps, and those steps have been broken down now, mostly by psychologists. That show us a pathway to do it. And so that's what I use in my trainings. I put together a 12-step program, not 12 steps like AA, but 12 steps to forgiveness. And I teach this to people, and I say, use your heart, take the hardest thing in your life right now, the hardest relationship, the biggest conflict, and practice it in the training. And then when they're done, they are not only forgiving in that hardest situation, but once they've done that, they realize they can do it. And if you can do it in that situation, you can do it in any situation. And they've also learned the process, so they have a tool they can use over and over again. And sometimes it requires a little, you know, not everybody masters it the first time, but after a few times people do master it, and it's life-changing. So this kind of training is very good. Then there's another thing in an organization which is important, which is to have a place that people go when they need help. Because when we're in conflict, even myself, I can't always get out of it myself. Sometimes you need somebody else to show you the way out. You're kind of trapped in your own story. You're trapped in your feelings. And so this is why we need, sometimes in some of our organizations, I don't know if you have it here, we have an internal person, or if it's a large enough organization, there's a team that have been specially trained in conflict resolution and forgiveness coaching, so they can help guide people. And so this is the work that I do. I'm teaching people how to forgive, and I'm teaching professionals how to help other people forgive. And it can make a huge difference. Of course, the most important thing is always to continue forgiving yourself. So it always starts there, because if you don't do it yourself, you really don't understand it as well, and you can't really help anybody else. And I always think of Nelson Mandela here, where he says, how can I ask you to forgive if I'm not willing to do it myself? And so, so that's really important. And I am humbled constantly. It is not easy to forgive, as somebody pointed out. It is a hard thing to do. It does get, you know, the first time's the hardest, you know, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. Partly because then you know you can do it. So at this point, I don't have to debate myself, should I forgive, shouldn't I? I know it's a good thing. I know it's not. I know it's going to be good, but it's still hard. So it's important to be humble about it and to admit this. It never, you know, it's just easy, at least for me. Yes? Do you want to show this? Okay. Are there other questions?
I just want one question. I have from a defense background, so if suppose you are in an armed conflict with someone,
Yes.
someone, you are with arms and other person is with arms, and you are in a conflict. Now, what will happen in that situation if you start having that feeling of forgiveness? Don't you think it's going to make you weak at that particular moment of time in that situation?
Yes, this is a good question.
Three drinks and food.
So, there's the first stage of conflict resolution is to stop fighting. If there's actual fighting, you can't do anything else but stop the fighting. So I wouldn't try to bring forgiveness in at that point. Now, Gandhi would say, yes, you surrender. I don't agree with that. It's the only thing, it's not the only thing, but it's one of the things I don't agree with. I think Nelson Mandela, others said, no, you have the right to defend yourself. And so you have to do that sometimes. At least I'm not at the point where I would just say, okay, just shoot me. But so even if I'm coming in as a mediator, I would not go into an armed situation. They have to stop fighting. Even people who come to me, if they're yelling I say I can't mediate, you have to stop fighting. You have to have a ceasefire, and then you can try to work with people. Yes?
Can I something add to what he's asked the question?
Yes.
Because I'm also from the defense background, also ex-naval officer. So what he's saying is that because it's in the conflicts, armed conflicts, forgiveness applies or not applies, but the principle.
At that particular moment of time and situation.
But the basic principle, the forgiveness principle relies on it's a disparity between, the stronger is forgiving the weaker. It is not the weakest forgiving the stronger. So when you're talking about the armed forces, the conflict like if the stronger country forgiving a smaller country is not taking a retaliatory action, or may not be taking action because it's for the smaller country, a weaker country, some action has been done, some act has been taken place. You're forgiving, that can take place as it. But with the war taking place between the two contingents where both are equal, not as bigger. So their question probably forgiveness doesn't apply.
That's what she says. Before it has to be a ceasefire.
Correct. So forgiveness, the basic concept, premise is if the stronger to the weaker.
Yeah.
It is not between the equals of that. Forgiveness is not between the equals. It's to what? I mean, that should be.
Yeah. I'll have to think about that. I haven't thought about it that way. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. What's your question? Yes, in the back.
Madam, what are those 12 steps which you launched? That's very important. No, could you give us a brief idea regarding those 12 steps?
Yeah, I teach this over, it takes a longer time, but in brief,
Give us a synopsis of
yeah,
it.
I should tell you, I will, and I have a workbook that lays all of this out. It's on my website, not this website. It's called thepathofforgiveness.com, and I'd be happy to give you a card that has it. I wanted to mention also I have an ebook on my website that is free. I'd love to give it to any of you who would like it. If you give me a card or give me your email, I will send it to you. And but what the 12 steps do is take people through those 4 aspects: the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, and the physical. That's what they do. But in breaking it down into step by step, yeah. That's the essence of it. So you're rewriting the story, you're healing the emotions, you're looking at it from a more spiritual perspective, and then healing the physical aspect. Yes. So this is what I prepared. I'm happy to answer other questions, discuss this. It's my favorite topic. Yes, me too. What? The video we could show. So I see you do have the path of forgiveness is here. It's the second one. Can you see it? Oops. Can you do it? I wanted to just make it higher. Yeah, I think it would be really good. Just make sure they can see that. Can you see the what URLs at the bottom?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
you can see it.
.mediation.com.
No,
No, the path of forgiveness.
Path of forgiveness. Bottom. There is the card also. Yeah, correct.
Can see now the path of forgiveness. Okay. So what I have now to share with you is a video that talks about this legal movement and shows you some of the different. There's several different people speaking about it, about holistic law, different concepts, and I think it gives you a good picture of some of what's happening. Integrative law.
At the time, I really had a sense that there was something missing in terms of my life. And I really thought the problem was me, that I just didn't fit, even though I found litigation very exciting and I think I was pretty good at it. It felt like somehow it wasn't serving the people that I really wanted to be serving. My clients often seem to feel more alienated, even when they won. And I had this feeling of distance. And
I just wanted to share with you who this is. His name is Gary Friedman. He lives near me, actually. And he is credited with, he's one of the people that really introduced mediation into the legal world. His father was a judge in New York. He was started out very traditional lawyer. That's what he's saying. He started out in litigation. He then thought about mediation and how it could be used. And he was one of the first people to experiment because in our culture there was a very strong policy that one lawyer could not work with both people because it was a conflict of interest. And so he had to really pioneer this path by saying it's not law, we're not serving as a lawyer, we're serving as a mediator, and it was huge at the time. Now we can look back, it seems very, we all take that for granted, but at the time it was huge. And he has trained thousands and thousands of mediators, including me. He was my first teacher, and he teaches in the US and Germany, and he's gone all over. So that's the first person. I don't know all of them, but he's been an important figure for us.
The aggressiveness and qualities in me that got exacerbated. Kind of opportunity was really there to realize that we can really bring peace. But peace only comes if there's justice. And so we have to find a way to get through it all rather than avoid it.
And for me, being a holistic attorney is a fairly straightforward concept. There are really some good things that come from the learned side of being a lawyer. There are good things that come from the experienced side of being a lawyer. So being a holistic lawyer is bringing back into focus many of the sort of best practices of law. Getting back to civility, getting back to humanity in the law, getting back to respect in the law. The things that I think the general public expects lawyers to be, but oftentimes they're not. So it is a conscious focus on that piece. The second piece is that we now know a lot about problem solving from other disciplines. So it is making law multidisciplinary in a very conscious way. So bringing information about the role of apology and how that works, information about anger and frustration, the emotional side of the law, and how learning about that or having some knowledge about that can help you solve problems. And so those two components together, for me, make holistic law. It's a sort of a more whole approach to the practice of law, a more whole approach to client problems, and I think a more helpful, healthy approach to life. There is another way to practice. It is more helpful. It is more humane. It is more kind in many ways, but not about being pushover. Being about sort of more respectful of all the interests that are involved. I think that's what being a holistic lawyer is about. It's sort of never-ending exploration about learning who you are, learning how to better relate to your clients, learning how to better relate to the opposing lawyer, and often the opposing client. On account of that, I think results sort of talk for themselves. On account of that, I've had opposing counsel often refer clients to me. I've had opposing litigants try to hire me for their family members when they have a problem. So here are the people that I had either sued outright or were main witnesses accused of wrongful behavior, and yet they came to me to help solve their family problems. So it was done in a way where I think they still felt respected. Yes, I pointed out that there was a problem. Yes, there was a problem that needed to be corrected, but I didn't vilify them. And I think that's a sort of an important differentiation as you learn how to be a better lawyer, is learning that not everybody is, all good or all bad. And that's important to think about when you're practicing law. And it's important to remind your clients about when they're involved in a matter with someone on the other side who's like them, not perfect, and like them wanting respect, and like them wanting dignity. And then if you show those things or demonstrate those things, then we can all come to a much faster solution.
As a lawyer, the most important thing is the quality of my client's life. And the quality of their lives, I think, going through the collaborative process versus contested litigation is dramatic. People have a fear of public speaking. And when they do these, what are you afraid of? Death, drowning, public speaking. It's always at the top. Well, being in court or having your deposition taken or something like that is, public speaking, square to cue, because risk public humiliation, being attacked. Collaborative process, that's not just not part of it. It's their quality of life, the client's quality of life, the children's quality of life. I think in most cases, it's dramatically better. What's better than the process? But that's the way there's more. Quality of my life is better too. And on a number of different levels. On those days when I'm called to go to the workplace, and I still go back. Rarely do I feel constructive. I get a result that probably personally, professionally, I'm at my most destructive self at that point. Because I'm either trying to destroy other people's arguments at the very best of things, destroy their credibility. You can't attack when it hurts something. And that's what's going on. And so I don't, don't always come home feeling great. The collaborative process, I feel like I'm being constructive. I'm trying to solve a problem in a constructive way. Not trying to fix something, not destroying something. So just that feels great.
Well, the criminal law, after God was
Well, it gives you an idea, and it goes on for, it's about 15 minutes, but, oh, it's not on?
Mic is on.
Okay, this gives you an idea. The whole thing is about 15 minutes. If anybody wants to see all of it, Nitya has it. And so, but I just wanted to share a few of the perspectives with you. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm happy to talk more about this. Are these things that are happening here too in India already? Yes? Good.
Yes, quite a lot of mediation takes places in India.
Now I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, to honor her with a memento from our university.
Oh, my.
Kanisha.
I know, yes. Oh, it's so beautiful. Thank you so much. This just means the world to me. Thank you.
And all for you.
Okay, thank you. That is exquisite. Oh. Oh. Can we take it out? Yeah. Oh, that's to do. Will somebody take a, with my own camera? I'll take it. That's so beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And that too?
Thank you so much. Now my suitcases are getting heavier.